No, Rob is not camping this week. Thank the Lord, because we all saw the audio issues I have when Rob's not around. No opening video tonight, guys. Sorry, we were a little rushing to go get things together. So today, Patrick, me and Patrick talked last week, and we're like, all right, we'll have you on Tuesday. We'll figure out the topic as it comes. So this morning, scrambling through news stories, I'm like, is there anything like interesting to talk about? Me and Rob put up. Like we saw there's a story about 400,000 people leaving the German church. We saw Cardinal Mueller gave a homily where he talked about the Vatican being mad about the sharp pilgrimage because it was a Latin mass. I'm like, all right, we'll go with that. And then like 2 hours ago, we see Edward Penton pops up this story that Cardinal Pell's death is shrouded in mystery. And I remembered watching your show years ago. You interviewed Cardinal Pell, right?
I did interview Cardinal Pell in 2011. He also endorsed my first book, Sexo Natural, and the invitation he gave me to speak in Sydney never quite came to pass, but he was a spiritual father to me. And I covered his trial extensively. I did 4 different shows from multiple angles about the charges and the history and ultimately the happy outcome for him, short-lived as it was.
Okay, so I don't want to jump right into this yet because I have a lot of questions about it. You interviewed him in 2012. What year did you leave Catholic Answers?
2016, September.
Oh, so you were still with Catholic Answers when you interviewed him?
Yeah, it was on the podcast that I created, Catholic Answers Focus.
Okay, and when did he go to prison?
He went to prison after his. That's a complicated question. I want to say he initially went to jail in 2019. When was the actual? Yeah, he was ordered to stand trial in May 2018, and then he ends up walking into jail the next year.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna back up for a second because the whole reason I really wanted to get you on. So about like 2-3 weeks ago, Patrick called me and he goes, "Brother, you want to go to Italy?" I'm like, "What?" Like, wait, what? He's like, "Yeah. We're doing a pilgrimage to Italy, and I was invited to go with them." So originally, I was just gonna go, just me and Patrick, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to Italy, and I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to Italy, and she was totally fine with it.
If we can clarify, not just you and I, Anthony. I mean, I think you're that way, but I don't think you're that way. With pilgrims, people.
So, well, the point I'm trying to get to. Well, first off, everybody like and subscribe. I see the audience is starting to build. Hit like, hit subscribe. I don't know why 50% of our audience watches us but does not hit like or subscribe. So at first I'm just like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna do this. We're gonna go, and then my wife takes a look at the itinerary, and she starts going on Pinterest looking at all the places we're going to visit, and she looks at me. She goes, "You think Patrick could use a photographer?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I really want to go on this trip." I'm like, "All right, we'll figure it all out." So, Patrick, what you've been to Italy several times, right?
Yeah, I'm a dyed in the wool Italophile. I've been there 6 or 7 times in total. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, what did you do? You just picked like the best places you've been, and like.
Yeah, we work directly with partners in Europe, as we did with our pilgrimage to Portugal and France with Bishop Joseph Strickland. And these are kind of boutique. We don't run tours, so they're not only go to the big places. We do kind of off the beaten track gems that most people have never heard of, but should be part of anyone's experience as a pilgrim. For instance, in France, in Portugal, we went to the second oldest, and I think it's the most stunning, one of the most stunning Eucharistic miracles at Santarém, just south of Fatima. It's in this little church in the middle of nowhere, and it's people want to find out more. It's Santarem, Santarém. In Italy, we're going to see the miracle of Lanciano, which is a Eucharistic miracle. I think it's the oldest one, and also the corporal cloth stained with the blood of our Lord. That's called the Orvieto miraculous Eucharistic miracle. So we deliberately kept it kind of mid to south. We're going to spend a lot of time in Tuscany. We're going to be in Florence and Siena. We're not going to go up to Milan. We're not going to do Lake Como. Not going to do Turin or Venice, which are beautiful, but a little more tourist with a camera, more than or as opposed to a pilgrimage where there's a holy site or a church or a shrine. So, I mean, I can crank through the places. If folks want to come, we would love to have you. I can give you our travel coordinatrix contact. As we do the show, we don't even have the URL up yet, but I'm glad to be talking about it beforehand.
We don't even have the site up yet, right?
No, the site's not quite ready, but we have 4 signups already. People on our previous pilgrimage, once we said the word Italy and gave the dates, which is December 2nd till December 14th, we already had signups. So this is already in motion. We're going to focus on Italian saints too.
I am beyond excited for this trip. I'm nervous about going. I'm trying to pick up on some Italian. I'm talking to the guys at work. I'm like, I don't want you speaking to me in English right now. I just want to pick up on it.
I want you to record a segment where you try to pronounce something in Italian and they pronounce it in Italian.
But you have to understand, I work with old Sicilians that left Sicily 30 years ago. I bet they don't even understand people in like mainland Italy anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's a different
dialect.
Totally different dialect. So okay, so you don't have the site set up yet. But what do you have, a phone number set up that people can?
Yeah, here's the number. The contact to hook you up like fish is Allie, A-L-L-Y. Allie can be reached at 775-340-6047. So area code 775-340-6047. And and just for jokes and fun, I'll give her email in case people now have a pen. It's let me just double check it here. I have a mind like a sieve.
No, it will not be a silent retreat, guys. I don't think I'm.
No. That. Yeah, that's kind of the ultimate oxymoron. Silent retreat with coffin and abate. Yeah, right. Allie, A-L-L-Y ontheway@gmail.com. So Allie.ontheway@gmail.com. Allie's been a pilgrim on one of our pilgrimages, so she knows the deal from the inside out. But what I'm so excited about, Anthony, is that we're not just going to hit beautiful churches, and it's pretty hard to get an ugly church in Italy. You can pretty much show up in any Italian village, town, or city and close your eyes and point, and within your field of vision, there's going to be a jaw-droppingly beautiful church that's hundreds of years old. The furthest south we're going to go is San Giovanni Rotondo in Foggia to learn everything we can about Padre Pio, great, probably the best known saint.
That's the one I'm looking forward to the most, because I have a deep devotion to Padre Pio. I can't wait to go there.
Yeah, my eldest daughter was born on his feast day, September 23rd. So we talk about the great Saint Padre Pio as well. He just died on September 23rd, 1968, Crazy. After bleeding regularly for 50 years from his stigmata. He's the longest established stigmatist in church history. And then we're going to go to Loretto and see the Holy House of Loretto on the Bari east coast of Italy. We're going to go to Monte Cassino and see the beautiful monastery there and hear what happened to that place in World War II. Spend a lot of time in Rome. I think we're in Rome for 3 or 4 days. If you spend 3 or 4 days in Rome, if you spend 3 or 4 months in Rome, you've just begun to touch the white of the shell of the egg, right? And then we're going to go north to Assisi, and Assisi's. Anything I say about Assisi from an aesthetical Catholic kind of aura of sanctity is going to be an understatement once you get there. It's just sumptuously beautiful. And then we're going to go to Florence, and ultimately we end in Siena, which is not too far north of Florence. And we fly back from Pisa.
Are we going to get a papal audience?
If in Rome it's a Wednesday, then that will be included. Yeah. But not a personal high five, no.
And so, would it really be a papal audience? Is the question. We'll
yeah, a lot of weather we're having, huh, Rob? I want a GIF or a GIF of Rob going.
Listen.
It happens every episode.
Here's what I will tell you guys. This will be a trip full of unbelievable memories, fun conversations, like laughs, and obviously prayer. And I think I'm so excited to hang with you, Patrick. I was telling Patrick, my wife and daughter were like, "Wait, who's Patrick Coffin?" I'm like, pull up my video. I had him on recently. We pull it up, and both my wife and daughter at the exact same time went, "Oh, he's cute." Like they didn't. My wife was worried you're gonna be like a weirdo or something when she saw you.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, he's cute.
Some can weirdos be cute? We can debate that.
Oh yeah, she doesn't know.
Awesome. No, we are going to have. I mean, our pilgrimages are we try to ride the middle line between not running a tour where we stay at the Ritz-Carlton, but also we don't stay at youth hostels. These are 3 and 4 star, very comfortable. The food is delicious in every place we go. You will feel safe and comfortable. And we do emphasize prayer. We have daily mass. We have a really great priest from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, named Father Douglas MacDonald. Father Doug's a big burly priest, very faithful Orthodox, and he's going to be celebrating the Novus Ordo in Latin. We decided we're not going to do any Traditionis Custodes fist fights of trying to arrange a TLM underground. It's not worth it. So for now, with the current scenario, we're going to have the Novus Ordo in Latin and with availability for confession. By the way, Father Doug, you guys know what tossing the caber is? These Scottish big, kilted men throwing what look like more slender telephone poles. It's like a sport.
Yeah, I've seen that. He's
in the Guinness Book of Records. He's the longest caber tosser. Yeah. So
that's interesting.
But a down to earth, wonderful priest who's, as all Orthodox priests in Canada, it's a pretty tough pastoral assignment. So all of his experience will be ready to minister to you, Anthony.
Yeah.
It's really a tough case.
He's going to hear a lot of confessions.
So Anthony, I want to know, is it going to be Nick and I running the show, or are you waking up in the middle of the night to do live shows?
It would be an interesting thing if maybe we could plan it where I could at least do one live stream from there. But yeah, I would love to see you and Nick do a show or two without me. But if there's a possibility for me to do some kind of stream, even if I jumped on with my phone or something, that would be awesome.
Maybe a live stream. Yeah, we can do a JV collaboration.
That would
we could do it like cool. On a weekend morning for us would be like afternoon for you guys.
I'm going, so over the next few months, I'm going to be plugging this pretty much every episode because we want to fill this up. Like this is something I would love it if our audience could join us for, if you want to come with your wife, whatever you want to do, if you want to come solo, I don't care. I think this is going to be one of those trips that are, one to remember, that's for sure. And I'm beyond excited for it. I've never left the country other than like the Caribbean. So this is going to be a brand new experience for me. Yeah.
We're jazzed. As soon as we said Italy, everyone who was with us in France jumped on it. And, because for Catholics, Italy and Rome especially is almost ground zero. I call it number 2 ground zero. Number 1 ground zero is where we hope to go in 2025, and that is the Holy Land.
Yeah.
There's no parallel to being in the land where our Lord and His mother and the apostles walked.
But
Italy's a close second. No, they probably won't.
Not after our podcast.
Hopefully the security there won't be too diligent on their listening habits.
When I saw we were going to the Holy House of Loretto, there's a documentary on Prime about the Holy House of Loretto and just what an amazing story that is. And as soon as I saw we were going there, I was looking up things to watch, and I watched it the other night. It was just what an awesome story. Like the house moved, and it's just like
that is the well-established small T tradition that house, which sits inside a basilica, was carried aloft by angels in a 2-step journey at some point between when Our Lady received the Annunciation by the angel Gabriel and when I forget which century it arrived, but I think it stopped in Turkey or possibly Croatia. And all of the the grout, the plant material in the grout between the bricks, it's all Palestine only kind of leaves and soil and that sort of thing. And the architecture and design of construction is characteristic of Nazareth. So it's one of those things that makes you go, huh? And also, why is this not better known? Same with the incorruptibles. We saw Saint Bernadette Subaru. We saw the Curie of Ars, Saint Jean Vianney, and who's the other one? Saint Vincent de Paul. Why aren't the Catholic incorruptibles saints who did not receive embalming, whose bodies do not decay? I mean, if these were Buddhists, there'd be 50 movies of the week made. We'd all know that.
Yeah, the incorruptibles, the Eucharistic miracles, some of the miracles of the Catholic Church are just they're just unbelievable. They played a very big part in my conversion and really
Hmm.
solidifying my faith throughout the years. So yeah,
Yep,
this is going to be awesome, man. I'm very excited about it. So we will be plugging this over pretty much every episode until then. Do we have dates yet, Patrick?
we do. Yeah, December 2nd, back on the 14th.
Okay.
We kept it at 12 days. We don't want to do like a 15-day commitment is a lot for people who work or have kids in school. On the other hand, 7 days, you're talking jet lag, flying there, flying back. So our sweet spot is 12
That
days.
great.
We had 4 days in Portugal and 9 in France. So we carefully pick how long that's going to be, and we include that in the pricing. So December 2nd, we fly from multiple countries. People in America will fly red eye on the evening of Monday the 2nd and get there on Tuesday. And if you fly on the plane, and we have some savvy traveler tips on how to sleep on an airplane. When we land in Rome, we're go, go, go. We don't go, okay, and now 9-hour break. We want to, have your money, you're laying out a financial commitment. It's also your precious time. So
yeah,
we make sure that the jet lag goes away ASAP once we get there.
All right, this is going to be awesome. So I'll be talking about this a little bit in the beginning of every episode because I really do want to fill this trip up. This is going to be an awesome time. All right, so now back to 2012. You're at Catholic Answers still. You interview Cardinal Pell. Is this before? This is way before any of those accusations even came out when you interviewed him, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there was nothing. There are 2 sets of accusations that were leveled after about 2017. One dates back to Ballarat, where he was first a parish priest in Australia, dating back to the 70s. That was dropped. Prosecutors dropped that. But then the other one was 2 boys, age 13, who in 1996, it was later claimed, sexually abused them after High Mass at the cathedral there in Melbourne. And their story, if you follow the trial as I did through a Australian journalist named Peter Westmore, their story, one of them, by the way, committed suicide. One of the boys killed himself in his 30s. May he rest in peace. He never brought any accusations publicly against Pell. It was the living one that drove this whole trial. And it parallels almost verbatim an account written in Rolling Stone magazine, I want to say in the year 2011. Striking similarities. The parting of the robes. You can't part robes, right? When priests are vested for mass, the boys being caught guzzling communion wine.
An episode of a show or something, like an episode, like one of those crime shows, like CSI episodes or something. Wasn't it like modeled exactly after that? Or it was a Rolling Stone magazine article.
I only know about the Rolling Stone accusation that had to do with a priest in Philadelphia, but maybe it was a Simpsons episode as well. The Simpsons have gotten a weird number of things right.
Yeah, that's true. What's crazy about all of this story is every bit of it that I know is from you, because when I was watching your show throughout this whole thing, and I remember because there's something about defending a priest that is accused of something, especially one with a conservative bend, that I remember that so many people were hesitant to even touch this story. And I remember you coming out and saying these events were physically impossible to have happened.
That's exactly what the High Court eventually determined in 2020 when they quashed everything else previous. Cardinal Pell has always been the particular object of hatred. When I say hatred, it's not hyperbole. If you watch footage of him getting out of the police van for his trial, these are like human demons. Go to hell, Pell, rot in hell. I mean, they're the mask of rage on the faces of these people. Some of them gay activists.
McCarrick hasn't gotten that much hate.
None. Forget it. He's given Joe Biden kid glove treatment compared to Cardinal Pell. Comedian, so-called atheist Tim Minchin, who wrote Matilda, wrote a song called something Come Home Pell, where he called him a coward. So Cardinal Pell was vindicated on all these charges because they were absurd. They never happened. Yeah. But I'm really glad you bring this up, Anthony, because Catholics there's a kind of a knee-jerk desire to protect your favorite, folk hero. Mm-hmm. And if it's an Orthodox conservative prelate and he's getting attacked, there's a Catholic instinct to say, oh yeah, this is just the devil trying to undermine a good man. That's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Look what happened to the founder of the Legionaries.
Yeah.
Well, not just him.
Marcial, and others. There's a long list of them.
Yeah, look at what's the most recent one? The FSSP priest with the Mass of the Ages documentary.
James Jackson. Mm-hmm.
Father James Jackson. Everybody's no, this couldn't have happened. And then you wind up finding out the most horrific thing. That's why I remember worrying when you were and hearing your reporting on it is what made put me at ease about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just because I don't know why I had this. I like facts. I like to and inside our community, True North, which is the relaunched digital community that I've started again. We talk about living your life like a juror. Life is about the presentation of evidence, and you should weigh evidence carefully. And ultimately, evidence calls for a conclusion. And in the case of Cardinal Pell's trial, none of it added up. There were too many anomalies, too many strange coincidences. And every single time His Eminence was accused, he answered. The only time he didn't get on a plane and go back to Australia was 2016, where he was supposed to testify at a royal inquiry or of something or other. But his doctor said he was too ill to travel, for which he got attacked, of course. But when the more serious charges were filed a year and a half later, he did not have to do this, but he relinquished his attachment to all the things he was doing in Rome, which, by the way, was uncovering a massive amount of financial corruption. Yeah. Maybe we can segue to Roberto Meloni. But he got on a plane and flew the 22 hours as a man in his mid-70s.
Yeah.
And
you look at his case
never wavered.
Versus Zanchetta, right? Who Francis has kept in Rome, hidden away from the charges he was facing back in his home country, right? Rupnik too. So Cardinal Pell is chosen as Francis's cardinal circle of 9 or whatever they would call it. What is it? The Fellowship of the Ring that he had going.
The Curial G9 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it was he had these 9 cardinals, and Pell was chosen to look through the financial of the financials of the Vatican Bank. And I remember these charges came up on him right as he starts uncovering some insane things at the Vatican Bank.
Mm-hmm.
That's
his background was, he had a business background. He was known as a good administrator and fearless in uncovering and exposing rats. And that's what he began to do. I believe, now, when I say I believe, I think there's evidence that will come out, and all the other circumstantial anecdotal evidence points in this direction, that these charges that he faced and went to jail for 404 days in solitary confinement, which is a pretty exquisite form of torture, especially for an elderly man, were manufactured to get him out of Rome and to neutralize him and neuter the reform that he was brought in to do. In that way, he's the clergy equivalent of Libero Meloni, who was his kind of assistant, the man for whom Cardinal Pell brought in, and together they were, I won't say Batman and Robin, but they were really uncovering a lot of cockroaches beneath a lot of rocks, and the money trail was too damning, and so they both had to go. Pell brought, so in their several ways they were both removed from the room.
Sorry,
what's not ironic, because it's not, but what's interesting is that the last time prior to this, someone really dug into the Vatican Bank. Someone ended up dead too. That was JP1.
Yes, there are some parallels with John Paul I. Have you guys interviewed Monsignor Charles Mueller?
Not yet. I
read the book, but we haven't.
He wrote Murder in the 33rd Degree. The evidence is pretty clear. Something terrible happened to the Pope. He was involved in a very loud verbal fist fight the evening he died, and it had to do with someone uncovering Masonic and other financial infiltrative corruption as well. So there are some parallels there.
There's so much to this Pell story, because you have this whole thing. He starts uncovering stuff. He gets summoned back to Australia. He gets convicted of something he didn't do. He spends almost 2 years in jail for something he didn't do. Then he finally gets released. He comes back to Rome. Mm-hmm. He writes the Demos memo, which goes to all the cardinals, warning them against electing another Francis, right? Is that generally what that?
Yeah, it was a chapter and verse snapshot of what he was dealing with as an insider. I'm generally anti-hiding behind pseudonyms. In this case, I think he went under the pseudonym Demos because if he'd used his real name, I think he knew the risk was high that they'd say, "Oh, that's the guy accused of being a pervert. We don't need to hear from him," or "Oh, he's an Uber trad," or something ridiculous like that. So he got a lot of horses out of the barn by writing under an assumed name. And if you should read it, put the link up.
Yeah, let's bring that up. Let's read that because I think people really do need to jog their memory about this.
It is rather long, but we can maybe.
By the way, Anthony and Rob, the footage of Cardinal Pell's return to Rome, he meets with Francis at the Apostolic Palace, and he goes to kiss his ring, and I'm sure you can predict what Bergoglio does. Nope, he plays the game of psych. We're going to be in the Cathedral of Loretto. That's where he did the 20 minutes worth of yanking his hand away when people were about to kiss it. Yeah, that was there. It's accidentally hilarious, but yeah.
What a goofy.
So do you want to crank through the text?
Yeah, let's. Sure. I mean, at least bring the highlights up because there's some wild parts in that. I remember.
Okay, bringing it up now.
Okay. Where should we start? Okay. Commentators of every school, if for different reasons, with possible exception, Father Spadaro, agree that this pontificate is a disaster in many or most respects, a catastrophe.
And this was 2022, so people know that.
Okay. Let me just see something. Hang on. What did I do here? Okay, so this you want to skip all this or?
Well, I'm just here. Let's just maybe get to some of the charges.
The first point is this is what the church is.
Yes.
This is the nature of the Catholic Church. It does this, this, and this. And then the next points are this crappy thing happened, papacy was silent. This other horrible thing happened, papacy is silent. So he's contrasting the standard, if you will, of the gospel without compromise, that's the papacy, Peter and his successors, and then all of the depredations and corruptions and the malformed, this goes by many names, let's call it weaponized ambiguity, that is fomented and published widely by the current regime in Rome. That's why I think the document's it's a good thing to read, because he starts off with the way things have been and ought to be versus the way they are right now and getting worse.
Okay, so the Christocentricity of teaching is being weakened. Christ is being moved from the center. Sometimes Rome even seems to be confused about the importance of a strict monotheism, hinting at some wider concept of divinity, not quite pantheism, but like a Hindu pantheism variant. Man, this is wild. Pachamama is idolatrous. Perhaps it was not intended as such initially. The contemplative nuns are being persecuted and attempts are being made to change the teachings of the charismatics. The Christocentric legacy of John Paul II in faith and morals is under systematic attack. Many of the staff of the Roman Institute for the Family have been dismissed. Most students have left. The Academy for Life is gravely damaged. Some members recently supported assisted suicide. The pontifical academies have members and visiting speakers who support abortion. The lack of respect for the law in the Vatican risks becoming an international scandal. These issues have been crystallized through the present Vatican trial of 10 accused financial malpractices, but the problem is older and wider. The Pope has changed the law 4 times during the trial to help the prosecution. Cardinal Becciu has not been treated justly because he was removed from his position and stripped of his cardinalatial dignities without any trial. He did not receive due process. Everyone has a right to due process. As the Pope is head of the Vatican State and the source of all legal authority, he has used his power to intervene in legal procedures. The Pope often rules by papal decrees, which eliminate the right to appeal of those affected. Many staff, often priests, have been summarily dismissed from the Vatican Curia, often without good reason. Phone tapping is regularly practiced. I am not sure how often it is authorized.
That was just brought up in the secular news.
Which part?
Was it?
Francis phone tapping.
Oh yeah.
You think it's definitely Francis or the CCP or does the Vatican have their own CIA basically?
Yes and no. I don't think there's an official department, but the Vatican through their nuncios has long been known to kind of be, intelligence gathering. Yeah.
Okay. The financial situation of the Vatican is grave. For the past 10 years at least, there have nearly always been financial deficits. Before COVID, these deficits ranged around 20 million annually. For the last 3 years, they've been around 35 million annually. The problems predate Pope Francis and Benedict. The Vatican is facing a large deficit in the pension fund. Around 2014, the experts, this is before COVID, it is estimated the Vatican has lost 217 million in this property deal. Despite the Holy Father's recent decision, the process of investing has not been centralized. We'll scroll through a little. The changing role of Pope Francis in the financial reforms, incomplete but substantial progress as far as reducing crime is concerned, is much less successful, except at the IOR.
That's the Vatican Bank.
Yeah. Initially, the Holy Father strongly backed the reforms. He then prevented the centralization of investments, opposed the reforms, and most attempts to unveil corruption, and supported then Archbishop Becciu at the center of Vatican financial establishment. Then in 2020, the Pope turned on Becciu, and eventually 10 persons were placed on trial and charged. Over the years, few prosecutions were attempted from AIF reports or infringements. How far down before? Is it all just financial stuff?
Oh, so here's political
Okay,
stuff.
so 6, go to part 5. I'm going to go to. Okay, the political influence of Pope Francis and the Vatican is negligible. Intellectually, papal writings demonstrate a decline from the standard of JP2 and Benedict. Decisions and policies are often politically correct, but there have been grave failures to support human rights in Venezuela, Hong Kong, mainland China, and now the Russian invasion. There's been no public support for the loyal Catholics in China who have been intermittently persecuted for their loyalty to the papacy for more than 70 years. No public Vatican support for the Catholic community in Ukraine, especially the Greek Catholics. These issues should be revisited by the next pope. The Vatican's political prestige is now at a low ebb. At a different lower level, the situation of Tridentine traditionalist Catholics should be regularized. At a further and lower level, the celebration of individual small group masses in the mornings in St. Peter's Basilica should be permitted once again. He's talking about them restricting the Latin Mass in St. Peter's. The COVID crisis has covered up the large decline in numbers of pilgrims attending audiences. The Holy Father has little support among seminarians and young priests. Widespread disaffection exists in Vatican Curia. The next conclave. The College of Cardinals has been weakened by eccentric nominations and has not been reconvened after the rejection of Casper's views in the 2014 consistory. So this is Francis not allowing cardinals to get to know him.
It's a boy. It's my voice. He just hears about Vatican corruption and he becomes very upset. Hey.
So that right, Rob, that's what that is. Like Francis, after Casper's 2014 consistory, the cardinals were not allowed to meet each other and get to know one another anymore. Like there's been no ability for them to learn anything about each other. After Vatican II, Catholic authorities often underestimated the hostile power of secularization, the world, the flesh, and the devil, especially in the Western world, and overestimated the influence and strength of the Catholic Church. We are weaker than 50 years ago, and many factors are beyond our control. In the short term, at least, the decline in numbers of believers, the frequency of mass attendance, the demise or extinction of many religious orders. The Pope does not need to be the world's best evangelist, nor the political force. The successor of Peter as head of the College of Bishops, also successor of the Apostles, has a foundational role for unity and doctrine. The new Pope must understand that the secret of Christian and Catholic vitality comes from fidelity to the teachings of Christ and Catholic practices. It does not come from adapting to the world or from money. So the first task of the new Pope will be to restore normality, restore doctrinal clarity in faith and morals, restore a proper respect for the law, and ensure that the first criterion for the nomination of bishops is acceptance of the apostolic tradition. These are all problems that have existed since Paul VI, basically, just the elevation of bad bishops.
Yeah, he says that this is essentially a difference of degree, not a difference of kind. He's not saying these problems all started in March 2013. But when he starts using language that begins with the next pope, I think those were fighting words, because he's looking ahead to after Jorge Mario Bergoglio goes to his eternal reward. And I think that was sort of the inciting incident that I don't know if I can say sealed his fate. Are you going to ask about the suspicious circumstances of his death?
So that's what brings up today's show. So Edward Penton, 2 hours before we're about to go on air,
I'll bring it up,
tweets, the Vatican's ex-auditor general Libero Milone told the Australian newspaper today that Cardinal George Pell's death last year remains shrouded in mystery. The newspaper reports that rumors have swirled around the Holy See for months that Pell's body was left in post-autopsy disarray and not properly dressed, sparking further concerns about his last hours. The Australian added that it had asked the Salvatore Mundi Hospital in Rome, where Cardinal Pell had died after undergoing routine hip operation, to comment on claims by senior sources that the interval CCTV cameras were not working on and around January 10th last year, and that no medical doctor was on duty the evening Pell died. At the time of the publication, the hospital has not responded. Some months ago, I sent and resent a list of 6 questions to the same hospitals, asking its health director, Dr. Luigi Maccatella, for clarification regarding the circumstances around Cardinal Pell's death, but he also did not respond. Salvatore Mundi is a private hospital half owned by UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The Vatican's ex-auditor general, Leo Malone, told Australian that he had made a heartfelt vow at the Cardinal's funeral last year to get to the truth about Pell's death. This sounds an awful lot like the mystery around Epstein, like the CCTV cameras aren't working. You know,
it does. It has an
call.
It's redolent, as the kids say, redolent of Epstein. It also reminds me of my belief that the Godfather 1 and 2 contain the recipe for life, or the example of how life works. Remember, Vito's in the hospital, and everyone's gone. There's no doctors except for a hapless nurse, and Michael has to take matters into his own hands. Why would the former general auditor, a man brought in by Pell, who was making a lot of progress, why would a man whose whole life is geared towards skepticism and uncovering wrongdoing, why would he stand at the casket of his mentor, former boss, with this, I'm going to call it more than an intuition, that something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and then go public with his vow to do something about it? He was he was 81, but he was also a national rules football player, a man with incredible energy. Everyone who meets him says the same thing. Even when he was stooped over with old age, after into his 70s, he had some other health issues. He had this strong, manly, kind of burly handshake, kind of a manly, fatherly or grandfatherly presence. And he came out of surgery, according to the Australian report, was chatting amiably with his anesthesiologist, and then he expires of a cardiac arrest.
Operating table.
No,
he had recovered. Now they're calling it heart. Any heart issue, your eyebrow should go up, because
there are drugs that will induce a heart attack that will not appear on test about an hour or two later.
Yeah, there are also invisible ways of doing it. You can receive a myocardial infarction through a hotel wall, but that would belong to another show. It's gone are the days where it has to be like a dart to the neck or a pill in your tea. That's not how they do it now.
Yeah, and you're talking about people that are very high up in having access to things like that, right? And that scene from The Godfather is one of my favorite scenes. Enzo the baker walks in, and Michael sees Enzo. Who are you? I'm Enzo the baker. I come for you, father.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not like the Curia is any stranger to murders and assassinations. I mean, throughout history, there's plenty of proven cases.
Yeah.
So now this guy that's saying this now, he just did an interview with column something from EWTN, talking further about the Vatican financial, like all the crazy things going on in the financial district, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's doing two things. He's raising questions about the circumstances of Cardinal Pell's death. He's also suing the Vatican, by the way, as Cardinal Pell encouraged him to, because he was given the Golden Boot Award unjustly and has suffered, financial losses. And he's now, I don't know if he's filed it or is about to, multi-million-dollar euro lawsuit against the people who fired him. And the first time the Vatican judges, surprisingly enough, rejected it. I wonder why, but he's appealing it. So he's definitely a lay Italian analog of Cardinal Pell. They're definitely kindred spirits.
What was your initial thoughts when you heard Pell passed?
Well, apart from sadness, it just seemed so unlikely that a man as hale and hearty as he would suddenly have a heart attack after successfully having surgery. It's hard not being there and being kind of remote from the facts. You never really know. I wondered if he got jabbed with the injection. I don't know if
that
he
was
ever
the
made any
first thing I
statements.
thought. The first thing I thought. I mean, this is right after COVID, and we're hearing about all these side effects. You know what I mean? So, like, my first initial thought was, okay, maybe it could have been that, but it was just so convenient for them. And then we found out about Deimos, right? It was just like all right after another. It just seems so.
I mean, even Burke seemed to have concerns about him having this done in Rome.
You have a clip of Burke, right, Rob?
I do, yeah.
Let's play that clip real quick.
So this is from Burke's recent interview with Matt Fradd on Pints with Aquinas. So
Carl is from Australia, so Carl's probably very much interested in this episode.
I was blessed that he came to see me the day before the surgery, after which he died, and we had a wonderful conversation. But he was completely serene about the surgery. I had was urging him to. In Australia, they had done such an excellent job. He had already had 2 knees replaced and 1 hip, and I was urging him to have those same doctors do this last hip. But he wanted to stay in Rome. He felt a very strong duty as a cardinal to be in Rome, and it's all. He said it to me. He said, "We're in God's hands," and of course, it's true. See, he was completely at peace about the surgery, and I must say it was a terrible shock to hear that he had died just a few hours after it. But anyway.
Also, he wasn't. I don't know if this is His Eminence's choice to go to Salvator Mundi, which is half owned by University of Pittsburgh. So there's an American connection there. I'm not saying they provide horrible care, but it's a very small facility, only a few dozen beds, I believe, compared to the Gemelli, which has over 1,000. The Gemelli Hospital is they nickname it the Third Vatican. I mean, if Francis gets so much as a paper cut, he gets whisked there.
Yeah.
Why hip replacement for something 15 minutes down the road is another unanswered question. But that might not be that important. But I do hope that my friend Edward Penton continues to uncover more hidden truths under the rocks, thanks to his conversations there with Signor Miloni, because there's an untold story there. You mentioned the word convenient, Anthony. Cardinal Pell was the ultimate inconvenient man for Team Bergoglio, because they did not expect the High Court of Australia to overturn everything and to say on the record that there's a high possibility that an innocent man was convicted. So there he's back in Rome, and of course Bergoglio yanks his hand away, like as if to say, "I don't want you on film kissing my ring." So we have at least one. We have the element of motive.
Yeah, you want to know what's weird though? So you have Pell writing this memo, right? But in front of the cameras and before, in public, he was kind of defending Francis. Oh, no, it's not Francis, it's the people he has around him. He wanted to get right back to work for Francis. But you wonder if he was doing that to try to stay close, to see if he could get a peek into a little bit deeper about what was going on over there, Is
it another Corleone principle? Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
I mean, it seemed that way, because if he's writing that under a pseudonym and he's telling people what he really did, look at the mess this papacy. He says it started way before that, but look at how much things have deteriorated under this papacy. I mean, we were talking about it last night because we were discussing the whole ridiculous Cardinal Zen Lofton thing, but just the way the state of Catholicism, how it has deteriorated over the past decade, something I never thought I would ever see in my lifetime. I remember, even despite all the problems, the abuse and all that crap, and we had terrible people in the hierarchy that would teach nonsense. You could always count on Rome to put their foot down on the final thing, whether it was through the DDF or whatever. It would just, back then, was it the DDF back then? I don't know.
CDF. That we have to keep pretending that it's always been the DDF, like the word synodality. Yeah.
It's just totally crazy.
What happens when you have someone in Rome and a regime like as it is today, all the other branch managers, so to speak, know that like traditional or Orthodox Catholics, their complaints can be thrown into the trash with a smile, because there's no consequence for bishops who are upwardly mobile in their ambitions. So
Yeah.
it matters who's in Rome. It matters that the decision makers very much set the tone for the worldwide Catholic Church. Do you think if Pope Benedict was still actively the Pope right now, that Pride Month could so sully June, the Sacred Heart, devoted traditionally to the Sacred Heart of Jesus? The fact that the whole rainbow lavender agenda has gained such steam inside the Catholic Church is another example of this.
Well, you think about even just it wasn't until Benedict steps down publicly like that you see gay marriage come about, right? Like in America, even that's happening in 2015. You see like just the cascade of things that went. I mean, the idea of Benedict being the catacomb really is a very powerful image, because things really do just completely take a fall off the cliff after he takes that, that step out from the public eye, and you start getting all this different nonsense coming out of the Vatican over the past decade.
Yeah, and the Advocate puts Francis on the cover with "No Hate" tattooed on his face.
Yeah,
unthinkable for any previous pontiff.
What do you think comes next? You think? Okay, so I was watching Gavin Ashenden breaking down a Jules Gomez article talking about Anglican, the Anglican, like a segment of the Anglican communion reuniting with Rome. It was a total nonsense article, but I heard Gavin made this passing comment. He went, people underestimate how, whether or not the Pope, he said the College of Cardinals is Catholic, even if the Pope isn't. And it's crazy to actually hear people say things like that publicly now, because you'd have been excoriated for it, even a couple of years ago. But it seems like more and more people are willing to say Francis isn't Catholic. It's a crazy thing.
It's so strange. I'm glad you're bringing this up. Traditional-minded Catholics, the Orthodox brethren amongst us, are very comfortable calling him a globalist, a homosexualist, a Mason, a Satanist or satanically inspired, worldly. What was the one that you just said? Not Catholic.
Yeah.
But if you say the A word, if you suggest anything about anti-pope or pseudo-pope evidence, you, sir, are a sedevacantist. And don't deny it, because only a sedevacantist would deny he's a sedevacantist. Any label but that. It's literally crazy.
Well, what's crazy is once that label gets put on you, the ostracization, like, is that the word? Ostracization that happens to you? Because I mean, I have people with some out there opinions that are friends of mine that don't get treated the way you do. And it's pretty.
Yeah, it's just Rene Girard locked this down with his mimetic desire. People need to have scapegoats, and they need to feel good about their own cowardice. It's cowardice to not have this conversation. I'm not asking anybody to believe as I believe or come to the conclusions that I have. What I am asking for is for adults with brains, since Jesus came to take away our sins, not our minds, to have a look at the evidence and decide for yourself. I'm not the adjudicator. I have a laptop. I have curiosity.
Yeah,
I'm not a canon lawyer, but I can read. And I know the main editor of the 1983 code was Cardinal Ratzinger. I do know that Cardinal Ratzinger forgot more Latin than I'll ever learn. And that when he crafted his Declaratio in 2013, which he wrote by hand, according to his interview with Pete Shaywald, he knows exactly the prescriptions and proscriptions of a valid papal resignation. And his document itself does not pass muster. Now, it's a second conversation about whether or not that was deliberate. So all I want to do is jumpstart the conversation among the men who can do something about it. And that is the cardinals that were elevated by John Paul II and Pope Benedict. And unfortunately, there's a kind of Catholic equivalent of the faith alone heresy. And that is just one more novena, just one more prayer, one more rosary, as if praying alone is sufficient. It is not.
What did you think of Vigano's most recent statement on Exsurge Domini?
I didn't really go
through it. That's why
he wrote two. He wrote two in a row. There's that one. And then there's the j'accuse, right? The I accuse. Archbishop Vigano is Italian. And when his Italian blood comes up, he writes with a very intense fervor. I think the fervor that he had toward President Trump and identifying the deep state and deep church unity is an example of maybe getting a little bit over his skis. I appreciate that he's trying to open dialogue, which is what we're all supposed to love, right? Dialogue on the damage done, not by the spirit of Vatican II, but by the documents of Vatican II. Demos there, Cardinal Pell, was kind of rightly complaining about the poor catechetical formation and the fact that the last 60 years have seen X, Y, and Z. But no one wants to say, well, what happened 60 years ago?
Yeah.
Now,
But
I don't know.
that-
Well, one more horse out of the barn.
Yeah.
I don't know if Archbishop Vigano wants the entire Second Vatican Council to be deleted. I know he's a lot more trenchant in his observations about it. But I don't want to talk outside church, but I tried to reach out to him privately to encourage him to show up at his sham trial.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a video about this. I think he needs to be there. He's so far decided that because he doesn't regard them as having any kind of legitimate authority, he doesn't want to validate it as because it's a kangaroo court. Okay, but St. Joan of Arc, St. Thomas More, St. Peter, St. Paul, Edmund Campion, these are all saints that our Lord himself showed up at his own illegal trial. There were at least 14 laws broken in the trial of Christ. So why go? Because it gives a written record as a precedent for everyone else who's being targeted for canonical punishment. And it also forces your enemies to speak. We need to hear these lies exposed. Get them down in writing.
Yeah, but look, there's something very real about what you're saying. It's like, if you really do believe what you're saying, are you willing to die for it, right? And there was probably, like, if Martin Luther wanted to genuinely bring about actual reformation in the church, like genuine reformation in the church, he should have died. Like, he should have died. Like, he should have went and faced his accusers and just went and said, this is what I see as corruption, and been willing to die for what he believed. But because he went about it the way he did, there's something like you're not willing to be a martyr for the faith at that point. You know, like, if it's all the saints that were willing to die, even the ones who were unjustly persecuted by the church, a few decades later, the church winds up going back, looking at those things and saying, okay, this is where we were wrong. And it actually brings genuine reform. So I actually agree with you 100%. He should definitely go to this sham trial. Yeah.
The precedent would be very helpful for other priests and prelates and others who are being similarly targeted. Precedents, that's everything in law, because it sets the conditions for future decisions. That's all judges have to rely on, are cases that have already been adjudicated up or down. And it would be very helpful for those people if Archbishop Vigano had done that. But I guess I have the same amount of influence that I have over him as I have over my dog. So hope springs eternal.
Do you still, did you lose a lot of your personal friendships? Because I'm trying to, when did you actually come to this conclusion, like your position on Francis? When did you actually come to that?
This was the fruit of over 2 years of reading everything I could find about the activities of the St. Gallen Mafia cardinals in the lead up and the execution of, pardon the metaphor, of the March 2013 conclave. It wasn't until I read the book Pope Emeritus ? By Stephanie Acosta that I began focusing on what I think is the kill shot. And I say this in my video, which came out on February 11th, 2022, on the anniversary of the Holy Father's departure from Rome. And that is the munus and ministerium distinction. Yeah. Munus is the Latin word for office or gift. Ministerium is the word to describe external functions and behavior as Pope. And I was simply laying out evidence. It was called 7 Pieces of Evidence that Francis is an anti-pope. And since then, the reaction among establishment conservative Catholic pundits was so full of hyperbole and just weird, nasty. I mean, friends of mine calling me coffin and wanting to put me in that sedevacantist box. Actually, they weren't using the S word at the time, but more like rad, trad, fringy, you know, like I'm an SSPX sympathizer or something, which is, there's so many ironies there. So it was 2022. But my position is just, as more evidence comes in and as I read more, it's not been sufficiently refuted. It's very easy to call someone names and withdraw. I had some people run away from our Hope is Fuel Catholic on Purpose Summit because of this scapegoating thing.
You think they ran more from your position, or you think it was more the E. Michael Jones drama from that?
It was pick your poison. The people are gonna,
Combination.
if they don't even know who he is or don't know what the conversations I've been having about the anti-pope evidence are. It's like Al Capone, murder and hookers versus accounting anomalies with tax.
I think it was probably more likely E. Michael Jones, because there's he's a sedevacantist, which is a little toxic, but then there's the anti-Semitic label, which is like nuclear, and it's crazy to watch how people will be terrified to even have that guilt by association with someone who's supposedly an anti-Semitic person, and I do think E. Michael Jones is a bit myopic in the way he sees things because of what he experienced, right? So he goes and he writes the book, The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, and the way he got attacked, I understand him thinking like, I can't do anything because there's just nonstop Jewish people stopping me at everywhere I go. So it's almost like he sees everything through that lens at that point. But I mean, I defy people to actually point out something he's wrong in his actual writings,
In my case, it was either one or the other. And sometimes they just shriveled away. Even after they did their presentation, they just kind of vanished and then virtue signaled.
Yeah.
I've just moved on. It doesn't even matter who they are, but it was very disappointing. It was a mask drop. People don't want to define anything, Anthony. No one wants to define anything. They don't want to define anti-Semitism. They don't want to define racism. They don't want to define homophobia. They don't want to define anti-pope. They don't want to define sedevacantist. I want to define things. I'm a Catholic. I believe in faith and reason. I believe that the human mind is inherently logical. We are made to understand the truth and live in its light. And as soon as you start quashing conversations and censoring and wanting to delete people, that's when people become very upset because their voice is silenced. And like this law that just passed, run by the Zionist Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
Does nobody think this is going to cause anti-Semitism?
Why
does an interest group get to define what governs? This is now thought police. This is Canada, a larger version of Canada now.
It's completely insane. Now, okay, so now it's going to be it's not like you're going to go to prison for it, but you can be fined for it or something. There's going to be some civil charges or something. It's just any step in that direction. And it's so funny that the same people who've been yelling about free speech are the ones enacting this. Like you're talking about people who've been ranting about free speech because the left is stopping us from speaking the truth. Now I don't know if anybody actually truly believes in free speech. Not that we as Catholics believe in free speech. Like, we don't think you have a right to blaspheme God or anything, but it is interesting to see when people put up their stop sign and say, no, that's the line, that's the border you can't cross,
Yeah, all rights are subject to certain dilution, including the right to free speech, fire in a crowded theater, blaspheming our Lord, offending people's, transcendent religious values. I think this is why I think it's preferable to embrace the Catholic understanding of freedom rather than the Masonic American understanding of liberty. We don't do things just because we can. We don't stand on this rugged individualism. We believe that freedom means the freedom to do what you ought, not the thing that you want to do, just because America. And America's going down. It's not if, it's when.
What do you see happening over the next year or two in American politics?
Oh man!
But how about the next 6 months? What do you see happening with this election?
Well, it's going to be Barack's maybe wife replacing, or Governor Hairgel. That Biden can't stand. This is a pre-planned slow beheading of Joe Biden. I've never seen a debate so far advanced of the event. So he was made to walk out at the edge of the pirate plank there, knowing that they couldn't, not only could they not hide it anymore, they showcased it.
Do you think they didn't give him the usual cocktail that they give him, right? Like last year, because if you think back to 2020, we all thought Biden was like this in 2020. We were seeing clips of him fumbling. Like we all thought what we saw this debate is what we thought we would see in 2020. And he came out and he was wired up on something. His eyes were wide open and he was able to sludge through that debate. And Trump even looked bad in that first one because he came off like a bully. Like Trump came off like he was badgering him, you know? But
there was definitely a glitch in the bot. Maybe they were going for Adderall XR, but they put in Wellbutrin. I don't know what the cocktail was, but it did not work. Clearly, the elevator didn't go to the top floor that night. And I thought Trump, to his credit, had a kind of, it's weird. It's a weird word to use for him, but he had a note of compassion.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things he could have really unloaded, you know, and I can imagine the accidentally hilarious way he would have put it. But after the end of an incoherent sentence, Trump said, I really don't know what that sentence was supposed to be. And I don't think he did either. Yeah. But he didn't say it with this, you know, Trumpian mocking tone. I thought he was very reserved in his keeping his eye on the ball.
It's almost like he felt sorry for him, right? Like I'll be honest. If I was in Trump's position, I would have just looked at the moderators and I'd be like, are we really doing this? Like, am I like seriously, guys? Like,
is this like elder abuse?
Like, look at what we're doing right now. Is this for real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a sight to behold. So you think they did it early? Because this was earlier than any other debate we usually get, right? Usually they do it. The first one's like in September or something, right?
Yeah, I think they did this to prune him out. Yeah, but they're gonna be in trouble because you have to. Whoever fills in is going to have to get up to speed super fast, and we'll see.
What do you do with Kamala? Like you have to do something with her. She's the vice president. You can't just jump over her and have all. I mean, she's the DEI hire, right? Like she's the DEI hire.
Do you know nothing of Roman history? They jumped over people all the time.
Well, but in this current like climate, it's okay. You're going to jump over the DEI hire now. She could throw a fit.
I don't know what the constitutional the amendment-based procedure would be in this case. I don't know if she could automatically take over because of one of the amendments, and then she could voluntarily withdraw the 25th Amendment. Then maybe she could voluntarily resign. That would pave the way to the person whoever it is. They already know who it is. The machine knows who it is. And I find it very interesting to listen to old school, what we might call blue dog Democrats like James Carville, just unloading on their own party. Like, no wonder we're losing. Panic. Yeah, we were playing clips like right after the debate we went on. We were playing clips from like even Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. He's like, what are you people doing? This man to watch the meltdown the following day was so glorious. When you lose Maddow, hello.
Right? And even the past couple of days with all the Supreme Court rulings, it's reminiscent of the 2016 Trump victory. Like I saw people like the hardcore libs were like, all of this because of emails. Like they're still worried about Hillary Clinton's email thing because all of this is because Trump won in 2016, put these judges in, and he got a couple of minor victories. Like they're acting like Trump is going to be like anything in the world is going to change other than they can't convict him for some insane crap that they put him up on over the past few months. To
be fair, Chevron is a pretty big decision by the Supreme Court. That dismantles a lot of like the deep state's ability to affect laws. So
Rob, was that a clever reference to rising gas prices?
No.
So, well, I think the main thing with Chevron, the reason OSHA was able to put into place the mandate was because of Chevron. So overturning that may prevent them being able to do something like that again in the future, which is very good.
They would have to pass an actual law instead of making an expert ruling on a previous law. Yeah.
All right. So why don't we take this over to locals and we'll get a little risque over there.
Spicy.
Yeah. All right.
What
so
have
guys,
we been doing for the last half hour?
We're gonna get even crazier over there.
You want to mention Ali's contact info for Italy in December? So this is Advent in Italy. We're going to go to the very. It's the all creme de la creme shrines, approved apparition sites, 2 Eucharistic miracles: Rome, Assisi, San Giovanni Rotondo, Florence, Orvieto, Lanciano. all the words that end in O. To find out more information, call Ali. That's ALLY. Ali is at 775-340-6047. That's 775-340-6047. Or if you're more email minded, it's ali.ontheway@gmail. ali.ontheway@gmail. And then when the URL is up, we can throw it around. We would like to. One bus full is great. And this is going to fill up quickly. So find out more information, because normally people need to hear it 7 or 8 times before they apply it to themselves. And we don't want you to miss the bus. Daily Mass, confession, and just hanging out with Anthony and I.
During Advent.
Awesome.
During Advent. So we're doing Advent in Italy. It's going to be cheaper than if you book the trip yourself, because we're going as a group. It's going to be hanging out with a very fun group of people. We're going to have a lot of memories. I'm beyond excited for this trip, and this is going to be awesome. If you guys have ever even thought about going to Italy and you're on the fence about it, like, this is the time to do it. Let's all go. We're going to go this Advent. It's 5.
Do you know where you're going to be for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception on the 8th?
That's off the top of my head, I don't, but we're going to be celebrating that in fine form.
Awesome.
I don't know, but it's on the schedule. We follow all the liturgical calendar, and we have daily rosary, but mostly we just let our hair down. Like Anthony and I know there's going to be great simpatico, and we draw a certain kind of Catholic that doesn't take themselves very seriously and doesn't want to clutter up the room with political fistfights, but we take the faith very seriously. So we're all in without compromise on the Catholic faith, but we're also human, and we love to raise a glass and yuck it up.
I had a conversation with Calvin Robinson after your Portugal trip, and he told me it was one of the best trips he had ever taken.
Oh, well, that's mutual. Father Calvin and I are plotting collaboration in England. We want to do an English martyrs history of the Reformation pilgrimage in the UK. That would probably be next spring. But Father Calvin is such a straight arrow truth teller, and he's got that Irish. He's got that British kind of posh way of getting it across. You can't. You have to love the way he deals with enemies on Twitter. It's really
I love my Black Irish friends, so I mean,
we're not locals yet.
You see, there's that Rob gesture again.
Yeah, guys, come on, man. Let's book this trip up. Let's get a nice AB audience going to this thing. We're gonna have a good time, man. Very fun, very fun. So yeah, we'll be plugging that for the next pretty much every episode until December. So Patrick will be on several times before that trip too. So all right, guys, hit like, subscribe, share the show. We will stay on top of this Cardinal Pell story. If anything else breaks on it, we will have Patrick back on, because he is the guy to talk to on this because of his pretty deep knowledge on the situation. So are you going to try and get that interview? You're going to try and interview the
Maloney,
Libero Maloney. Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to him about this.
And what's your new show again? You started it back up?
The podcast has always been the same, but we've relaunched with new guests. I've got 5 guests already in the pipeline. The new community is called True North, the True North community, and all of it is going to sit in one place. That's patrickcoffin.media.
Will you be uploading to Rumble or you?
Rumble, everywhere you can go. Yeah, I was banned from YouTube, but we're gonna work around, but it's a secret.
Try to restart one. Yes. All right. If there's anything we can do to help you promote that, just always let me know. We will always try to help you out with that. So
thanks, brother. Right. Appreciate it very much.
True North, you said, right?
Yep. True North.
True North on patrickcoffin.com.
patrickcoffin.media.
patrickcoffin.media. All right, guys, we're going to go over to the other side, and we're going to get even spicier than we were over here. We'll see you guys there.